Today is more about reminiscing and what I remember of Royal Oak. And I know a lot of you here are probably a little older than myself. And I'm sure that I would probably know a lot of your parents simply because we had a business in Royal Oak. I grew up on Albina, and we moved out to Viaduct into Interurban when I was about 13 years old. And I thought my mom and dad were moving me into the middle of nowhere. And I would never, ever see any of my friends ever again. Anyway, I used to go into Colquitt's. Luckily enough, there was a neighbor who worked down at Dockyard there, and we caught a ride with him in the morning, and we had to make our way home. At that time, there was only 2 buses a day, so if you missed the 4 o'clock bus, you just didn't get on the bus. And Johnny McNutt, of course, anybody who knows, been out here, knew the McNutts, and their garbage trucks used to always try to run us over when we were walking home. And I remember the little store at Wilkinson Road and Interurban too. We always stopped there and got a pop or some candies to get us all the way home. No parents came by and picked us up. If you showed up for dinner, they knew you were safe. I went to Royal Oak in around 1962. My dad bought the old post office at Royal Oak, and before that we had the Burnside Bakery on Burnside where Island Muffler is. We used to supply the island with bread during the war, and then he went into the Vic West Bakery, and then when we moved out to Royal Oak here, he decided that he was going to start up the Royal Oak Bakery, and that's when he bought the post office. So I remember vaguely of the police station out here, the old store out here, Enid, the Orchard store, and Morris used to tell me how he used to, at his lunch hour, go in there and get a bottle of pop and get a donut and stick it on the top of the bottle, and that was his lunch, a donut from our bakery and and a bottle of pop. My story will probably venture more around my husband's family because he grew up out here. He moved from Vancouver when he was 2 years old, and he lived up on Pipeline. And if anybody knows the McLaughlins, do you know the McLaughlins? He was a school teacher at Royal Oak as well, and they lived there for several years before they moved to West Saanich, right across from the Palmers and the Wilsons, and next door to the Heather Bell Kennels. Royal Oak had a lot of characters, as you probably all know. Mrs. Flanjack, Mr. Morrow, Mr. Moss, the Quicks. We all grew up with the Quicks. Morris used to hay for Buster Quick when he was 11, and he worked for Buster right up into the 70s. And so we were great friends with the Linda and John Gray and Sharon Quick, and Morris went to school with Gary Quick, who was shot and killed, unfortunately, and with the Hartnicks and the other Hunts that are out there, Bill Hunt, and so we're still involved with all those people that were from Royal Oak, and that's what I found different about this community. They seem to stay together. They seem to keep in touch, and even with my school friends. We go back, 30, 40 years, and we're still have lunch with one another, and it's great. I did bring some books that you can go through, and there's some albums. I'm sure I went to school with a lot of your younger brothers and sisters. I've already mentioned, it was Doreen, wasn't it? And a lot of you, if I recognize your names, I'll know who your siblings are. And of course, I went to school with Al Cuthbert. Yeah, so if you want to go through the albums, if there's any pictures you're interested in taking off, you're more than welcome. Has everybody like grown up here in Royal Oak? Do you remember the businesses down there? Everybody remember? Bill and Joan had the fish and chip store, and then Bob and Doris had the shoe repair shop. Really great people, and there was Evelyn's Ladies Wear, Doug Crosby. He was just adorable. Anything you needed to know, he would help you out. There were a lot of family businesses, and that's what I ended up quitting school in '64. My dad needed someone to work full-time at the bakery, and I loved working with my dad. My dad was my best bud, and I'm just so sorry that he left at a very young age. He was 56, and I often wish I had wrote down some of his recipes, or, you know, I used to be amazed at how he could mold 2 loaves of bread at once, and he used to fire those donuts in there, and you know, it'd be cooking hot in the summertime, and yet he'd still be up there at 4 o'clock in the morning, make sure everybody got their bread. And I swear to God, he would probably roll in his grave if he knew that bread now lasts 7 days and not, you know, the day-old bread, because back then. And that's a sad thing. We are losing our bakeries. We are losing our small businesses because these large businesses are taking over. And you not only can get everything you want in a large business, and unfortunately, our generation, we remember all these small shops, and they're going. And I think it's so sad. I grew up with people like Carol Bleethman. Anybody who had a business at Royal Oak always had kids. And Bill and Joe McConnell, they had kids. Mrs. Masters' place at Beaver Lake here, I don't know if anybody knows the McMasters. They used to have a quarter-horse farm. It just sold. A part of that, it just sold this morning. And a part of that feels sad for me because that's another generation who is moving on. She's still walking. She's like 96 years old, and she walks up and down Beaver Road. I still see the Darbys who lived on, I now live on Spring Road. So I'm 68 years old. I've lived in Saanich all my life. I've had the same phone number for 50 years. It's kind of pathetic. 50 years, it'll be 50 years this October that I've had that same phone number. But I think that's, I don't know, I just can't imagine myself living anywhere else. And I still dance down at the community hall. And I think it's a great community. Although I don't belong to that community, I shop all in this area. One story I have to tell you that before my dad gave up the Royal Oak Bakery to Mr. Lund, the developers came around to Royal Oak and they said, "We're thinking of putting in a development called Broadmead." And all the business people got together and said, "It's not going to fly. Who's going to go across that highway to shop?" Boy, Dad, if you could see all us now. I've never seen growth like Royal Oak. And I don't know whether it's for the good or the bad. It's a lot of people in a small area. And I don't know that they'll ever have the close community like we've had in the past. I don't know. Morris used to, we talked about the Heatherbell kennels. Morris used to play the violin for the dogs. I'm not so sure he's proud of that. And he doesn't usually talk about it, but yeah, he used to play, and he used to play baseball, and there's all kinds of pictures in there of him playing baseball. He was involved with cars. He went on to be a plumber and a pipe fitter. When he was a journeyman, he's put together all these buildings, all the Camosun College, the rain curtain down at the museum that's no longer there. Morris put that in. He did all the plumbing in the Crystal Gardens, and he did all the buildings up at the university and dockyard. He started off at the winery. That wasn't such a good thing, but he had fun anyway. And so now he's retired and enjoying that. He's working on 2 tractors, and I think that's what it's all about. Just enjoy life and enjoy your hobbies.
Are you ready for some questions?
Okay, see if I can answer some. Sure.
I and quite a few of the people here went to school in the 50s. I graduated in 53, and some of them were pretty close to that. You left school in 63?
64.
64. What was your school life like in 1964? Get personal.
Get personal. It was all about the boys, of course. And I think I think Heather and I were reminiscing about people in the area, and I think I dated her cousin or something.
That's right.
Bruce Winterburn. Yeah. Yeah. I loved school. I really did love school, and I thought Royal Oak was a fabulous school. When I first started in '62 at Royal Oak, I left Colquitt's because Dad wanted me to work after school. So this is why I left, and so after school I would go down there and work, and then I only worked Saturdays because, as you know, back then Sundays was family day. And all the businesses had Sunday and Monday off. So that's another thing that's changed since in the few years is stores don't close anymore. They're open all the time. But no, I had a good time at Royal Oak. Royal Oak was good. I thought it was a very good, it was different than the city school. I considered Colquitt's being the city school. The people were more laid back. It was a smaller community, yeah. And it was there that I met Diane Jacobs, and Diane still lives across from Prospect Lake School. She's been there, and her brother's Gary Jacobs. I don't know if anybody knows Gary. He's not well. Morris's sister's not well. She has Parkinson's, so she isn't able to get down to this. But I know most of your names just by, hearing the conversations between Morris and Fran. They say, "Oh, have you seen so-and-so?" So I've known a lot of names, just not faces. Anything else you want to know? Where did I meet Morris? Well, I worked at the bakery ever since I was, 14 or 15. And all these guys would drive by in their hot cars after work and wave to me. I'd wave back. And one day, Kenny Yep, he was the one, he'd go by on a big backhoe or whatever he drove and waved. But it's funny, there's all these cars. And anyway, Morris and Bill Hunt came in one day and asked me if I want to go water skiing. This is a Saturday afternoon. It's like 90 degrees. I'm in a hot bakery, and yeah, I'd love to go, but, I was working. I was also dating somebody else. And I had just broken up with this fellow. I had been going out with for 10 months. And one day I saw Morris downtown, and we were walking. My girlfriend, my dad at the time, we were walking up to Town and Country. My mom and dad were avid bowlers, and we were walking up to Town and Country to meet them, and Morris saw us, and he picked us up on Douglas Street there and gave us a ride up there. And then he asked us to see me the next day, so we went out. And of course, my motive was Morris had a hot car. He had a 52 Olds, 2-door hardtop. It was a pretty nice looking car. And I just wanted to make this guy that I just broke up, or we just broke up, I wanted to make him jealous. There was a motive, you know. Anyway, I told Morris when we were dating that the fellow that I was actually, we had broken up, I was actually engaged to him. And we broke up because I was very young, and he was in the Air Force, and he didn't think he was back in Saint Jean, Quebec, and didn't think it was fair for me to be sitting home at my young age while he's back east. So I was all good with this, but not good. So I decided I was going to date Morris, and I told Morris that when Ron came home at Christmas time, I would be going out with him. He was all good with that. He said, okay, yeah, no problem. But he gave me my engagement ring November the 11th. So we met in May and engaged in November, and then we were married the following May. So we just had our 50th wedding anniversary, May 28th this year.
That was my next question. How long have you been married? Was it love at first sight? Because he said it was, so I haven't heard your response to that.
He kind of grew on me. Like I say, you're talking to someone I was 17, and so do you really know what love is when you're 17? No, I think it's something that, it's the car, you know, and it was a hot car, and I was too young for him to do practical jokes on, but I remember him as being a very sweet and kind man. And one thing I do remember about the community down at Royal Oak was at Christmas time, all of a sudden you'd hear, and be somebody at the back door of your business, and they'd go around to everybody's business and have a drink. That's gone by the wayside. And we supported one another at these businesses. You didn't think of going outside of your community to shop, ever. You know, I don't know. And then, of course, with Bill and Joe McConnell, I mean, there was 5 of us kids and then the 2 adults, and you go down on a Friday night for fish and chips, he'd always slip in extra chips and another piece of fish, and, you know, it's just great people, great people. And even Bob, the shoemaker, I didn't know their last name. He was Yugoslavian and she was Scottish. Very sweet couple. And I remember one day he said, Morris goes through so many boots. I was always taking boots up there to be repaired. I make him a pair of boots. So these boots cost me I think it was $125 or something, and that was in the late 60s. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they better last. But they were beautiful, handmade boots. The man was a talented man. And there was a garden shop there, and there was a hardware there.
Ladies store?
Evelyn's Ladies Wear, yes. And the Economart. Matter of fact, I go down to Economart for my groceries, and I met up with Elsa and Ollie, and to this day we're still friends. I used to go down there and I'd start my shopping, and then the girls would say, okay, it's my coffee break, so we'd go in and have coffee and then come back and shop. But like I say, all that's gone now. All that's gone. How sad. How sad. Any more? Yeah, I don't know what started that fire. I don't know. Morris may know, I don't know. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. But I remember Mrs. Well, I know whenever they saw her coming into a Conner Mart, everybody would disappear. Nobody wanted to serve them.
Did you have role models in the neighborhood when you were a kid, or teachers perhaps? Who did you look up to?
My dad. Yeah, I think I learned a lot from just the way people ran their businesses back then. I got thinking about how we treated our customers. Thrifties gives out cookies. We gave out cookies years ago when we started a bakery. Dad said the best way to get to know your customers is to be kind to and make them special. And their children, they all got a cookie when they came into the bakery. And if there was a phone call, I was by myself in the front. And he said, when you're by yourself and I'm not here, if the phone rings and you're with a customer, you take their phone number and their name down and say you'll phone them right back. Because that person who is driven or walked to the bakery to get something is who gets served first. And I just took on his way of and I'm shocked. I'm absolutely shocked when somebody is putting my groceries through or something through, and they sit there, or Sears or whatever, and they take a phone call, and I'm standing there waiting for her to complete my transaction, because that's not the way I was raised. So I think my dad, he was self-taught baker. He worked in a bakery in Fairfield, and he lied about his age because he was the 15th out of 16 children, and Granny only brought 8 of them over. Some of them had passed. They all made it to a certain age, but I guess different diseases or flus or whatever took them. And so he lied about his age. He got a job there when he was 14. And one day the baker phoned up and said, I can't make it in. I'm so sick, I can't make it in. You'll have to take over. So my dad was self-taught at 14 years old. Kids wouldn't do that now. They wouldn't take the responsibility. So I think he instilled in us, you know, when you take something on, you take it on and you finish it. You finish the job.
You went to Colquitt's.
Mm-hmm.
Horace Dawson was the principal?
Yes, he was.
Do you remember anybody else there at the time?
Mr. Dawson and
Horace
Mr.
Dawson.
Hall. Mr. Hall. Member O'Sheeny.
Did you have a favorite teacher or anybody impressed you that you remember? And then you went
Mr. Hall was a really nice man, very kind.
59, 60, and so on.
Yeah, I remember her. And Miss Atkinson. Yeah, I went to Colquitt's for 3 years, or almost 3 years. Mr. O'Sheeny, everybody was afraid of. He was the typing teacher. There was, I'm trying to think of the name of the teacher. He was a little short guy, and he used to teach the guys. Ken Proven? Yes, Ken Proven. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, he was there were some teachers that you could really get down and be yourself with them. Yeah, and he was one of them. I didn't have him personally but he was a very, very popular teacher. 15 cents each, and then they went to 16 cents each and 2 for 31. And then Mr. Maltwood used to come down with his nurse to get a jelly donut, and until they went to 6 cents, and then he was refusing to spend that extra penny. He'd always come down every afternoon and get a jelly donut. But, yeah, can you imagine, eh? 31 cents for 2 loaves of bread and half price for day old. And now you're lucky to get a fresh loaf of bread that isn't 7 days old. So, you know, what is put in that bread? Yeah.
Did you wrap it in paper and string, or were there plastic bags yet?
Okay, when I was 8 years old, I've been at the bakery ever since I can remember. My spot was on the 100-pound sacks of flour at Burnside, because I had 2 siblings. There was five of us. My older brother and sister are 2 years apart, and the younger brother and sister are 2 years apart. So I was right in the middle. And so with my mom having 2 younger ones, and there was 4.5 years between myself and my younger brother, my dad quite often would take me to the bakery. And I'd ride my trike. I can remember riding my trike up and down Burnside. I can remember the railroad tracks actually going up and down the Burnside. And I can remember as I got a little older, going down to the tally-ho and petting the horses. But when it came to my afternoon nap, I could go up as high as I wanted on these 100-pound sacks of flour and sleep anywhere I wanted on these 100-pound sacks of flour. I mean, they were to me, they were stacked really high. And so when I got a little older, I was a little more helpful, and my job was to sweep around the machinery. And my dad had a machine that you put in a loaf of bread, and it would slice it, and then he'd pick it up and he'd put it into this other machine where it would go through an assembly line, and it was wrapped in wax paper. And then one day I was sweeping away, doing my job, and the broom fell into the machine. So because I'm little, and instead of going to get the broom handle from up here, I went in here, lost a finger, or just the end of a finger. So that was my first experience of you know, and so I always respected that wax paper wrapping machine.
So were they sold that way?
Yeah, they were.
They just put it into a paper bag?
No, they were sold individually because they were sold in stores. We used to supply, like I say, we used to supply the island with bread. We used to have my uncle delivered bread and goodies to what is known now as the jail. It was the mental institution back then. And yeah.
What about the flour sacks? What happened to the flour sacks?
Mom took them home and bleached them out and made us sheets.
The only mom that did that.
Yeah, she made sheets, and even when she died, she had a pair of I wish we had them. They're nice, heavy cotton sheets. Yeah, she made sheets. And she, you know, I had a sister that was 9 years older than me, and she made all our clothes from, you know, children above.
They were made into tablecloths sometimes too. My grandmother used to embroider them.
Yeah.
And pillowcases too.
And pillowcases, yeah. But I never had bought sheets till I got married. Never even had my own bedroom. I said, you kids are so lucky you've all got your own rooms. I never had my own room, ever. Got married, still don't have it. Still got to sleep with someone. Yeah. Okay, that picture was taken by one of our customers at Royal Oak at the bakery. And he took this picture right about here is where the Royal Oak Plaza was. And do you remember the stop sign that went out to the Pat Bay Highway? Yeah, well or you could cross over and go up Royal Oak Avenue. And this is Rithit's barn. Okay, this picture was actually taken in 1959 by one of our customers. My mom had it blown up, and I just kept it as a keepsake. And the barn burnt down the very next summer. And the reason why it's so precious to me is because Morris used to work at that farm. And he hated her Buster quick. And so where there was ever any hay, that's where Morris was. and he worked for him for, like I say, into the 70s. And I spoke to Sharon just at Christmas time, matter of fact. I haven't seen or heard from her for a long time, but she's now a neighbor of mine that just moved up to Willis Point, and she's looking after her kitties. So she phoned me to find out more about these cats. So it's nice to contact her. I see Linda Gray. I don't know if anybody. There again, she's a little older than me, but. So I don't know how many brothers or sisters I know of yours, but I'm sure I know some. Was anybody a customer of ours at the bakery? Yeah, I knew Heather would. I live on Spring Road just off of Quail. So there again, I didn't move very far from home. I'm only about a block away. And it's fun because now when I take the trail down through Quail Road and there's a trail if you go to the bottom of Spring Road on the left-hand side and it trails out to Interurban Road, there's a walking trail, if anybody knows the loop. That bridge is actually at the back of our place on Viaduct. And I'm sure if I looked hard enough, I'd find my initials in some guy's name. I don't know. We used to hang out there, and I don't remember smoking back then. I don't think I did. But I remember telling Morris when we first started dating, I says, we have fish coming up here. I said, no, you don't. Yeah, we do. He says, they don't come up this far. I says, yeah, we have spawning fish up here. And the salmon would come up to Viaduct that were that large, spawning. That's gone. That's all gone. There's a good creek in there, but Van Trite, what he did was he dammed off the flats there so he could put a potato farm in there. So unfortunately all that's gone. No, I knew Barry Yule. Barry Yule used to deliver our milk for years, from when we were on Albina right until we came out to Viaduct, and actually when my parents moved to Royal Oak in behind our bakery, Barry was still delivering there. And I have seen him, but not for a long time. And I used to go to school with his sister, Joy Yule. Any other names coming up?
I was wondering when the Lunds took over the bakery at Royal Oak.
Lunds took over in 66 or 67. 66.
Was theirs placed in the same place as yours?
Yeah.
Did they buy it from you?
They bought it from us, and then he sold it to another fellow who abandoned the bakery and sold. They found all the equipment up at Ucluelet, and they left Mr. Lund high and dry. And he moved out to Sydney, of course, and I think his son has taken over from him out there. Yeah. We bought the building off of the post office, and the post office is right next door to the Chez Arnay restaurant. Mr. Crosby was in the center at that time, where the pet store is now. Yeah. Yeah, they demolished that because they said nothing ever will go in there, and then they built that thing up again, the center.
And Dr. Penn had an office next to the restaurant?
Yeah, and it's funny, I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought of Dr. Penn and Dr. Nicka, who was the dentist there, and I thought of Dr. Penn's nurse, and I thought, could you remember her name? Really gracious lady, and she wherever you were, she knew who you were. She knew who your children were. Matter of fact, Marie, who was I can't remember Marie's last name at bowling. Merritt. I met Marie at Prospect Lake when my kids were, I guess at Prospect Lake when she was one of the school nurses that used to go around to all the schools, a community nurse, and she came home with me when I had Jeanette, and Jeanette's now 43. Yeah, but it seems funny, like I say, after all these years, you're meeting all these people.
And she's just
Fire some more names at me. There's some that I'm sure I did write.
Well, you went to school with some of the Minters, I think, the younger ones.
Minters, yeah.
John and Mike were the
Yeah.
youngest.
Yeah. Phil Minter, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother had a baby die of SIDS, and that kind of threw my dad for a loop. So he retired from the bakery, sold it to Mr. Lund, and then he took a year off, and then he ended up going back, and he was head baker for Woolworths downtown, and he was there for a couple of years before he died. He was misdiagnosed. They told him he was just afraid of growing old. That's why he was having pains in his shoulders, and so they gave him 14 electric shock treatments to make him forget he was growing old. He died at 56, massive heart attack, blowing out the candles on their 35th wedding anniversary cake. So, check your doctors. I'm sure they're more thorough now. The Vets Plant Box, that's another one that's been a long time out here. There again, we all supported them. They came from a business downtown and then moved their business out here. And the egg farm down at the corner here, or down the road. Yeah, Christensen's. I see it's still running. One positive thing I've seen that's happened out here is they have done something with the horticulture farm. That it makes me happy to see that. That's a beautiful. They've done something with that piece of property. I think that's a beautiful site to go.
Big hand on it.
Tea and coffee. Help yourself to look through the albums if you like, and there's some school books.